Hello students, welcome to Legacy IAS Academy. In today's video, we are going to discuss about the recent decision taken after the meeting of representatives from the India and China regarding the resumption of direct flight between both these countries. Now, this is a significant step because such decision has come after a long interval of 5 years. For almost 5 years since the COVID-19 outbreak, there has been no direct flight between both neighboring nations. So, why this decision has been taken right now? What has changed in the recent times, and what are going to be the implication of this particular decision on various different sectors? Let us try to examine in more detail. Now, to give you a background of this particular topic, during the recent visit of the Foreign Secretary of India, Vikram Misri, to China, both countries have agreed to resume the direct flight. And this latest development has come after a thaw in the relation we have seen after the two Asian giants. They decided on the we can say in the Kazan meeting that happened between the BRICS nation somewhere in last year. So both countries have decided to diffuse the tension along the border areas, especially along the line of actual control in the Aksai Chin and Ladakh area. So that recently we talk about both countries before that, they seem to be on war footing due to the deadly border dispute. So two nations have made substantial progress in the recent month to restore normalcy in the ties. And this decision of the resumption of flight should be considered and understood as the extension of the same. Now, during the recent visit of the Foreign Secretary, apart from the decision to resume the direct flight, two other important decisions have been taken. The first decision is if talk about as a larger picture of the rapprochement that both countries are witnessing, they also have included agreements on improving access to the journalists from both the sides. Both India and China have been restricting the visa and we can say visa approval for the journalists from both sides. So this is something that we might see changing in the near future. And second, most importantly, if you talk about from the perspective of general population of India, they also have decided to facilitate the pilgrimages to the Hindu holy site, as you know, in the Mount Kailash, which is considered as the abode of Lord Shiva, a very, very religiously significant site lying in the Tibet. So there also decisions have been taken. For example, if you try to understand the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra that is undertaken by the Hindu pilgrims from India, there are two major routes. The first route that passes through Lipu Lake Pass along the Uttarakhand, Nepal and Tibet Tri junction. Now this pass is relatively much more difficult to access and climb, especially for people who are old age, women, children and people who are having the general some form of disability. Now other easier accessible or easy access path to go to Kailash Mansarovar is through Nathula Pass. Nathula Pass is situated in the northeastern part of India along the Sikkim, Bhutan and Tibet Tri junction. So for many years, Nathula Pass, the access was not granted to Indian pilgrims due to the deteriorating relation between India and China. So there is a possibility of this route being reopened and the facility of the access being provided to the Indian pilgrims. So these are the two other welcome development that we can talk about here. Now, if you try to understand that if you look at the data from the past, that means we know that year 2020, when the flight were stopped. So before 2020, if you look at the data from 2019, there were so many airlines that were connecting mainland China to India. Most of these airlines were from China. Then you have two major Indian airlines, that is Air India and Indigo. And overall in the year 2019, total 5,179 flights have basically traversed the journey between two nations. And now if you look at the last year 2024, when the resumption of flight was not, the decision was not taken by India or the facility was not granted by India, that time you have zero flight, at least commercial flights were zero, only 6 flights were private airlines that they're able to take people from the business from one country to another country. So from 5,000 to zero, that has been a drastic reduction in the flight and that has curtailed the accessibility from the people of both countries into each other's territory. Now, even if you look at the month of February 2025, if you look at before the decision has been taken to resume the flight, there was no scheduled flight. It does not mean that people from India to China or China to India were not coming at all. Rather, there were some alternate third country route that were being used by the people here. For example, the most common route was from India to Hong Kong and then Hong Kong to China and vice versa. So if we talk about India to Hong Kong, total 392 flights were scheduled, and the other route were from Nepal to China, that also many people argue is route used by Chinese to enter into Indian territory. So there you have almost 230 scheduled flights. So the accessibility to China was very much curtailed, and we only have the possibility of going to China or coming from China to India by accessing through or transiting through the third country. So that is, this picture is going to change once the direct flights are resumed. Now, if you look at the visit of the foreign secretary, now it has also sent a very strong signal and message as far as the bilateral relation between both countries are concerned. Not only the parties have agreed to resume the flight, resume the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, make it much more easier for granting of visa to the journalists from the both side. Obviously, they will have to meet, and technical details will have to be then figured out that how the flights will be resumed. But overall, both sides have called upon to seize the opportunity that was largely provided after the meeting of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Xi Jinping along the summit of Kazan in the BRICS summit. So they have called on both sides to seize the opportunity, meet each other halfway in the hopes of ending what seemed to be an era of mutual suspicion, mutual alienation, and mutual attrition that both countries have largely fostered. So, flight to Hong Kong, on the other hand, has resumed after the pandemic lockdown, but those to mainland China did not because of the tension between the two countries. And now, since the tension seems to be easing, that this has been taken. Now, you can ask that what was the major reason why flights were not resumed even after the COVID-19 pandemic has passed. So, this we can attribute to the 2020 Ladakh confrontation that was observed between Indian security forces and the Chinese People's Liberation Army along the Galwan Valley, situated along the line of actual control that separates Ladakh region of India with the Aksai Chin region that is overall occupied by China. So the PLA has moved into the Indian territory at that time and started building fortified structures and defenses. When Indian security forces opposed it, there was a kind of clashes that happened where both countries were engaged in attacking each other, not by lethal weapons, but at least by stones, bricks, and we can say by sticks. So the June clash that happened in Gandral Valley, it has seen the loss of life from both the sides. And in the month of September, the China accused India that it has fired shot at its troops. At the same time, India also accused China of firing into the air. So if this indeed was true, it was over a period of more than 30-40 years that such kind of incidents would have been witnessed along the line of actual control. So this has led to the tension flaring up to such a proportion that it seemed impossible both countries were able to diffuse it and re-normalize the relationship. But recently, due to the meeting between the special representative from both India, that was National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, and the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang, the tension seems to have eased. Both countries have tried to again disengage from the line of actual control. Many of the patrolling points that were not accessible to the Indian soldiers, now it seems that they will have again or will get back access to it. So all these have resulted into the recent changes in the decision that we are seeing. Now, apart from the diffusion of tension at the border, there are some other factors that might have led to India taking this decision. You should mind that the decision to ban the flight was taken from the Indian side. Chinese do not have any problem in resuming the direct flight between India and China. And not only that, even in the past few meetings, China has clearly argued and put its point that why India should allow direct flight between both countries. So overall, second, if we talk about the other area where India was feeling the effect due to the flight ban was in its economic industrial sector, where we know that most of the machinery and raw material for a lot of India's industry are coming from China. And not only it is the transportation of machinery and raw material, rather it also is associated with the movement of the skilled technician, movement of the skilled professionals, businessmen and all that. So these were being hampered due to the ban on the flight. Then also the transactional policy of Donald Trump might have played a role here, because you know that Donald Trump is ready to cut a deal and have a deal with China if it suits the American interest, because he is working on the policy of America first. So India should not be left behind, and that is why India is also trying to re-normalize its ties with its nearest neighbor. Not only that, in the economic survey that was published in this particular year, India has shown a willingness to attract the Chinese FDI. Chinese FDI, if you compare the figure from 2016 and 2024, it has fallen tremendously. And that was also because of the souring of relationship and also due to the lack of access, lack of transportation and all that. And finally, as we know, that Chinese leadership, Chinese representatives, Chinese companies and businesses have been demanding for resumption of the flight for a long period of time. So this all together, we can understand, might have led to the decision of the government of India to resume it. Now, what is going to be the implications once the flight are resumed? Obviously, we have talked about that aviation sector is going to boost, especially if you talk about the largest commercial airlines of India, that is Indigo Airlines. It already has given an order of 1,000 Airbus to the company. And not only India, Indigo is now trying to intensify its approach or its overall connectivity within India, but also it is trying to fly on some non-conventional route where it has never flown before. Largely, it is also trying to capture the international routes, and that is where once the flight are resumed between India and China, Indigo obviously will try to take a big share in that. So this will overall give boost to the aviation sector. Air India anyway used to operate the flight before to China, so they will also come into picture. So that will bring a lot of revenues as well. Not only that, many experts argue that this is actually an economically prudent decision. The reason is because people anyway, India has not banned Chinese citizens from entering into its territory, and neither Chinese have banned Indian citizens from entering its territory. So all kind of visas are being granted by both of the countries to each other's citizens. Although from India's side, it is less number of visas are being issued as compared to before. But nonetheless, there is no ban on the entry of citizens. That means the people, if they want to travel from India to China or vice versa, they had no other option but to travel through a much more longer route, transiting to the third countries, shelling much more higher amount of money on transportation costs. So that did not make any sense. So it is economically prudent decision that will be helpful for airlines, that will be helpful for the people who are traveling to each other's country. Not only that, also we know that once direct flight between two countries are resumed, there are a large number of people who are interested to visit, and that will help in overall getting the potential or overall tapping the tourism potential that exists between two countries. Because both India and China have very distinct culture, and both are having one of the oldest and ancient civilization that actually has this tapped, and overall it has cultivated interest in the mind of youth specifically, where they want to visit each other's country and try to understand the culture and everything. So that will also be possible now. Plus enhancement in trade and investment, you can see, because such a huge amount of Chinese company have invested in India, they need the movement of skilled professionals and technicians. Even many Indian companies have argued that they are facing problem in boosting their capacity of production because of the lack of Chinese technicians. So that is going to change in the near future, and greater movement of professionals in all the spheres we can see. Now, if you try to understand that when we talk about the tourism potential, why it is important to tap into the Chinese tourism potential, because as per the data that has been published by a well-known reputed international travel magazine, if you compare the top countries and top countries and tourists, which kind of tourists spend most of the money, so you can see at the top you have the China. The Chinese tourists are known for spending the highest amount of money whenever they travel into any other countries. At second number, then you have US, then Germany, UK and France. So obviously, if Chinese citizens, Chinese people are Chinese tourists, basically we can say, are willing to shell such a huge amount of money, it is prudent for India to capture and get access to such resources. Not only that, as we know that India, China, we talk about from India's perspective, China is the second largest trading partner of India after the United States, with a total trade volume standing somewhere about 117 US billion dollars. So that is also requires the movement of a lot of people from both sides that can be facilitated. And most importantly, the other major beneficiary of this resumption of flight is going to be the Indian students. If you look at the number of Indian students, it has continuously risen who are studying in China. In the year 2005, the number were mere 765, and 2015, the number has risen to around 17,000. And I'm sure that in last 10 years, this number has risen to many times higher. So they had to face a lot of difficulties in coming from China to India and then returning back to China because there are no direct flights. So this we can say the Indian students who are studying China, they are also going to be the beneficiary of this particular decision. So that is all about this particular video. I hope you got gist of the reason behind resumption of flight and overall implications. If you like the video, please hit the like button, share it with your fellow aspirants, as well as subscribe to our channel for more such content. Thank you.